Welcome, Scott Radley, very well-known local Hamilton area journalist from both the Spec and CHML. Welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
So, yeah, I mean, your piece a couple of weeks ago, now on, well, February the 27th, not that long ago, on, the headline was "Brace Yourself for Hamilton's Looming Perma Gridlock." Um, and I have to admit, I saw that headline and thought, he's going to get quite a bit of feedback in inverted commas on that piece, even before I've read it. And then I read it and I thought, yeah, he's definitely going to get quite a bit of comment here. So tell us about the piece and the kind of reaction it's caused from uh, various commentators in the Hamilton area.
Well, essentially, what I wrote, the city of Hamilton is in discussions right now. Planning is being done towards converting Main Street, which is a street that runs the length of the city and has been a one-way street for decades, converting that to two-way, but not just converting it to two-way. And we'll get into why, part of the reason why they're converting it to two-way in a minute. But not only converting it to two-way, but also as part of the what do they call it, complete streets or whatever, reducing the number of lanes, possibly really significantly reducing the number of lanes. And when you combine that with the coming LRT, which at certain points of King Street, so if people who know Hamilton, you don't need to have the explanation. Those who don't, we have two one-way streets basically that run the length of the city. Main Street takes you west to east. King Street brings you east to west. When you get into the downtown, when the LRT comes, King Street narrows. There is now a section of King Street that will not have space for any cars whatsoever once the tracks for the LRT are in. So that's going to divert cars all over the place. And then Main Street, if you whittle down the lanes considerably, will send cars elsewhere. And then also the LRT design just recently for cost and other reasons got redone so that Dundurn Street, which is a north-south street between King and Main at the west end of the city, it now will have the LRT tracks running, taking up about half of that street. So you will have blockages all over the place. So basically what I've written, and I don't even, it's funny to me, you're right, we got a ton of response. I don't even know that this is a controversial position. I think it's just a logical position that once you reduce King Street to no lanes at some point and Main Street to maybe half the eastbound lanes that it currently has and block half of Dundurn Street in, I believe, the heaviest trafficked part of town, you are going to have gridlock. There is just no way around that. Now, we can have all kinds of debate about what's a better answer or what should they do or anything else. But I don't think it's controversial to say these changes are going to lead to traffic jams pretty consistently in the city.
I guess I mean the I'm trying to put the position of the people who uh, didn't like your article here. Uh, I guess the argument you could raise is like, well, it's all very well to say that these changes are going to increase traffic. I mean, there's greatly increased traffic is one thing. The other side of that equation is why would the city do this? I mean, are they just sort of setting out to be assholes and like, let's be nasty to drivers? And reading your article, I don't necessarily see you putting the argument for why this is being done, which is not just to be, difficult, but to take out. I mean, I moved to Hamilton a couple of years ago from Burlington, and the huge problem I see with the city is it has these two vast dividing lines right through the heart of it, where traffic is a barrier, and create these kind of unpleasant, dirty, smoggy rivers of traffic, if you like, that stop you getting from one part of the city to another. And as someone who lived for decades outside Hamilton, those same unpleasant kind of rivers of traffic were a big part of the reason where I never came to Hamilton if I could avoid it. Because it's like, oh God, it's a one-way system. I can never remember which road goes in which direction. It's just like, I'm not going to bother with Hamilton. I'm going to go somewhere else. And it's kind of a cliche in Burlington that, getting a Burlingtonian to come to Hamilton is like getting, blood out of a stone or whatever. So I kind of feel like the logic behind this change is to make the city itself a more attractive place to come to rather than an easy place to get through. Um, what's your kind of take on that kind of argument?
Okay, so a couple things that, and you raise good points. I mean, these are certainly points that people have brought up, and certainly part of the discussion. Um, Before we get to the bigger answer, let me just go back to a word you used, which was the smoggy part through this. Whether or not it's going to make this a more pleasant city to get through because we have these two big streets, it does. I don't believe that people are simply going to stop driving cars. So if we now have cars that are backed up forever onto the highway into Westdale, wherever, I think smoggy is going to become a way bigger issue because we're going to have a whole lot more idling and emissions. And this is something that has been kind of ignored. I mean, the city spends millions now with his environment office. And I don't think we've heard anything from them about what is the position on the environment with thousands of cars potentially in a
But I
traffic jam.
guess I guess that's why you build things like an LRT, why you try and improve your Go service, why you try and these are the things that other cities have done. It's not like Hamilton's the first city to ever do anything like this, is it? I think another city
No.
I used to live in was Edinburgh, built an LRT, they improved their bus services. And sure, traffic in Edinburgh is a pig. I can tell you right now, I'm not going to pretend it, but you've got all those other alternatives so that you don't have to deal with it unless you really want to.
And so what
It,
are the alternatives in Hamilton? And I say that seriously. And the reason why is because Hamilton is a unique city. I can't speak to Edinburgh. I don't I can't speak to that, but
no,
Hamilton's a unique city in that we are really divided geographically. We have a lower city and an upper city. And if you talk, and I know you have, if you talk to people on the mountain in Stony Creek, in Dundas, in Ancaster, in Waterdown, in Flamborough, the vast majority that I hear will say public transit doesn't serve us well. If I have to go downtown and I want to go for a concert on Friday night at First Ontario Center, I better prepare to leave Tuesday morning because it's going to take me forever to get where I want to go. So we have a city geographically that for many people requires vehicle driving. And so again, I get the concept of let's put everyone onto public transit. Let's make public transit the way to go. Our system right now, I don't believe lends itself to that. Maybe down the road somewhere, maybe if tens of millions and millions of more dollars are spent. But right now, you talk to someone in Waterdown, they're not going to go downtown by public transit more often than not. They say, I need a car to get there.
Yeah, but in that answer, isn't that kind of the solution? Is that, well, we have to start, we have to start somewhere and just building out that transit. And anytime you're talking about building an LRT, it's just gonna that process of building it out, it's just gonna disrupt the flow of everything. Like I don't see anything around it. Just this, but is it kind of like a short-term pain for a long-term gain? And once you start and you have the LRT, my understanding is the plan is to kind of build onto that. It's not the LRT isn't the end of the process. It's kind of the start, and it's to allow citizens in Flamborough up on the mountain and whatnot to get access and to get through the city more effectively than always having to take my car downtown to go check out a concert at the First Ontario Center or wherever.
So I want to make 2 points on your comment just to make sure
Yep.
I'm understanding correctly. The first one is if we're talking about short term, I'm not even discussing construction. Construction is, whatever length of time that takes.
Mhm.
I throw that out the window because construction is going to happen for anything, and you accept that as part of the. So when people say it's going to be 2 or 3 or 5, whatever years of bad construction. Yeah, I mean, that would be the case no matter what you're doing. It's to me, it's will the LRT ultimately solve the problem, or as you say, be the catalyst to really get public transit to be the solution. And I'm we will wait and see on that one. I've generally been agnostic about the LRT. I'm not wildly against it. I'm not wildly for it. My concerns about the LRT primarily are not to do with transit per se. It's the costs of it that we don't know a whole lot of yet. And I'm not even talking about construction. We still don't know what the operating costs of LRT are going to be. And the numbers that we've been given here in Hamilton, if you look at the same operating costs for an LRT in Toronto, I think you would say they are wildly undernumbered here in Hamilton. We've been told anywhere from 6 to 16 million. The one in Toronto, the Finch LRT, they just came in with a number that says it's going to be, now it's double the length, I get it, but it's going to be like 115 million a year to operate. So we get into LRT, we'll get into LRT later. The LRT could be, I suppose, a catalyst for those who are in the downtown, who are on the lower city. But I have, and I think a lot of other people do too, have a lot of doubts about whether the people who are in the suburbs are going to see that as the solution. And so we're still going to have cars that are wanting to come downtown, people who have to get downtown, people who are coming in from Burlington. I mean, Main Street at that exit where the Christchurch Cathedral, where we're talking about, that is the main entrance to Hamilton from Burlington, also from the mountain. There's two entrances there. And you're now talking about having an entry lane from the QEW from Burlington, an entry lane from the QEW from the mountain, and the streets coming through Westdale, which is 5 lanes now to handle that flow, potentially, as council talked about, whittled down to 2 eastbound lanes. And so again, my point is we can talk about whether LRT is the solution, and I'm open to that discussion. I haven't ruled that out.
Mm-hmm.
The question is it crazy to say that in the meantime, and even after the LRT is built, presumably, I mean, even mostly after the LRT is built, because that's when some of these LRT lanes are going to be in the way, that you are just going to have traffic everywhere. And that is really the point of the story I wrote, the point of the column.
But I mean, I agree it'll slow down traffic. I guess my point is the status quo doesn't really seem to serve other goals for Hamilton City Council. And by that I mean, as somebody who lives outside of Hamilton, whenever I drive into it, you get on Main Street or King Street, and the goal is always catch the wave, right? You sync your car speed up to the traffic lights, and the idea is like I never have to stop. I just keep driving all the way through Hamilton. And I thought that sounds like a fun feature, but when you think about it at its core, it's a messed up way to design your city of like, let's just get people through our downtown core as quickly as possible. And at the same time, the city of Hamilton is trying to revitalize its downtown core for decades. They've been trying to bring businesses and shops and restaurants and all that into the downtown core. And quite frankly, it's failed miserably. And part of it, I think, is that it's just not an inviting downtown core for people to come into. Couldn't this just be a way of saying, yeah, slow down, enjoy it, set up shop, go walk around and enjoy the downtown, as opposed to let's get you in and out as quickly as possible.
So the green wave, I'm glad you bring that up because that is something that's talked about in the city. It has been talked about for years. And again, you're bang on with your description that they had at one time synchronized the lights so that if you travel the speed limit, theoretically you could go from what we're talking about, Main Street and Dundurn, all the way almost to Stony Creek without ever having to tap your brake pedal. I don't know if anyone has driven Main Street in the last little while, but with the more cars that are down there and with some other things that are going on, that is not even remotely close to reality these days. And if you've driven Main Street, except for maybe, I don't know, maybe there's an hour in the day that's the low point. Otherwise, it is a slow moving road more often than not. And so what a lot of people have said, and I certainly to some degree concur with this, is rather than redoing this at a cost of 27, 28 million and creating some of these potential turnaround, what's the word? Unreversible. Yeah, I don't want to make up new words today. Unreversible situations. If you were to make it so the green wave died, and I live up on the mountain, and sometimes I'll go along Golf Links Road, which is in Ancaster, and they did the opposite. They've got the lights basically synced. So if you travel the speed limit, you hit a red light, it seems, 4 or 5 times along there. Used to be that you could go right through. Now, now you don't. That, I mean, to me, that is a much more realistic and solution that also can be tinkered with because, of course, traffic lights work on computers. You can alter them during rush hour to move people better so everyone's not blocked up. And then, during other parts of the day, you can set the lights to be asymmetrical so people slow down and stop. That has been a suggestion that a lot of people have made. And
But
I certainly think there is one that you take a really hard look at before you, as I say, start making irreversible decisions like this.
And I guess another big part of this debate uh, is the kind of view that we as drivers, and I'm a driver. I primarily get around by car. I had a break in that where I actually tried living without a car for a while, and it was exhausting. Maybe just because I'm lazy. So I'm back to the car-centric living. But this kind of view that we have a right as drivers and not in other avenues of life not to be inconvenienced. Um, uh, to get where we want to go as quickly and efficiently as possible, even if that's at the expense of the city as a whole and the other people who live in it who don't necessarily get around by driving. I mean, do you think this kind of car first planning is still the way we should be going? Because basically that's how Hamilton was designed, just like thousands of other cities in North America. It's like we've got to make sure cars get everywhere as quickly as possible, everything else be damned. And,
What
and
I
this is really what's happening now is we're saying, well, maybe we could do a better job of this that doesn't just make our cars into these kind of auto centric play zones or whatever.
Yeah, and what I just described though is, you make the lights asymmetric so that people aren't blowing through there. You can adjust this. There are ways to do this
So
that
you agree basically that making traffic worse is actually a good idea.
I think that there are times and there are scenarios where this can be done. I think that the intentional engineering of permanent gridlock is a bad idea. I
I mean,
will
then
say
do you
that.
think it's actually permanent gridlock? I mean, no, what is gridlock? Gridlock is actually cars not being able to move at all. It doesn't actually happen that often. I mean, it happens in Burlington when there's a crash on the QEW. If the particular, if the bridge over the Skyway Bridge gets blocked, then we have real gridlock for a few hours, maybe for a whole evening. But by and large, when people say gridlock, what they actually mean is inconvenient amounts of traffic, don't they?
I would suggest that if you are down to 2 lanes on Main Street going eastbound with all the traffic that's coming into the city, there is a very good chance for gridlock for a lot of the part of the day during rush hours. And what you will then have, I would suggest, and again, I don't want to claim this as a totally unique idea. This has been something that's thrown out as well. If you are trying to get across town and you're not moving, you will then veer off and start going through residential streets, which will then start to become potentially a problem. You've got lots of kids and families walking. I mean, we hear about Aberdeen, residents on Aberdeen concerned because of the vastly increased amount of traffic over the last number of years. Aberdeen is going to, and again, that runs parallel for those who don't know, parallel to Main and King. Aberdeen will end up taking a lot more traffic. York, at the other side, parallel of Main and King, York Boulevard will end up taking a vast increase in more traffic. And then the residential streets, as people try to find their way through, will take a vast amount of more traffic. This is going
And
to,
but these are
this is,
challenges other cities have dealt with, aren't they? I mean, like
except,
if you want traffic to stop going on a road, you can use barriers and controls to limit it at certain times of day to keep traffic away from somewhere during rush hours. You can use the sort of approach to use in London, which is of basically congestion charging. There are all kinds of avenues to control this kind of thing that just yeah, sure. If you close off one avenue, traffic will find another avenue, but traffic will also find its level You know, the rule of induced demand works in both directions. When you make something more difficult, traffic will find other routes, even if that other route is the railway or a LRT or whatever. I mean, you can see how it kind of works. We want to encourage people to take other methods of transit. We kind of have to make it beneficial to take those other methods.
So if let's go to your theory, and if the city of Hamilton had first taken the steps to make transit way better. Now, I mean, I don't know that they have the money to do this because it's a very costly thing to do. But if the transit system had been made so efficient that people saw transit as a great alternative, I think many people would take transit. I grew up in Toronto. I went to school on the TTC for most of my youth. It was very convenient. It was clean, it was
I mean,
convenient.
as good capitalists, we also understand that you have to create the demand before the money arrives to do stuff, right? Like, it's a very market-driven approach, if you like. It's like create the demand and people will take transit.
Or you don't do that and you make the downtown basically impossible to drive through, or very difficult or very frustrating to drive through. And what you have then is this city that already is very divided by mountain, lower city, suburbs, inner city. And I got to tell you, you asked at the very beginning what kind of response I've got. The many, I mean, I won't say I've got more letters and more notes on this than anything else I've written, but it's up there. And the overwhelming response, first of all, the overwhelming response was in agreement. Now, I take that for what it is. That's, I'm sure that some of the councillors who support this idea have also had letters in agreement that people are saying, whatever. But the overwhelming thing that I keep hearing from people who are in agreement is, I live in the suburbs, I live on the mountain, I live wherever. I will not come downtown because I don't want to deal with this. So maybe, and I mean, my tongue is halfway in my cheek. I don't think this is really the plan. Maybe the plan is we're going to reduce traffic downtown by discouraging anybody who doesn't live downtown from wanting to come there. And yeah, then we can make it more, traffic will still move and people will walk more and cycle more. But I don't think that's the ultimate plan of the people running the city, to say we're just going to discourage anybody who doesn't live in the core from coming to the core. That would be a pretty short-sighted, silly position to take, that we just want to tell you don't come here. And yet that is the position that I'm hearing again and again and again and again. You do this, you make it where I come down once or twice, I don't have any intention of coming again.
And I guess the counterpoint to that is I feel like the vast majority of Hamiltonians and certainly people from further afield don't come downtown anyway because it's horrible. Because the city has made so many horrendous planning mistakes over the years, including putting two huge highways through the center of town. That's like for, I mean, I'm saying there's someone who chose to move to Hamilton and who really likes Hamilton, but who sees the problems. That Hamilton is one of the cities in this province and in this country that when you say, "Oh, I'm from Hamilton," people go, "Oh God," second city in my life that I've lived in that is kind of a bit of a joke because people know it's not. It's got problems, and if you're gonna fix that, then you've got to start making the place look more attractive, and a really good way of doing that surely is to limit to deal with that thing where you're the primary characteristic of the center of the most what is should be the most important part of your city are two traffic what I call traffic sewers, which kind of shows my biases, I guess, I admit, uh, going at high speed through the middle of your city that kind of just divide everything apart and make your two primary thoroughfares economically kind of useless because no one wants to run a business on Main or King really for most of the length of them, unless you're running a crappy coffee shop or a tattoo place or something like that. That's not what you want in your main thoroughfares. You want people walking and shopping,
Well,
and you
you
want
want
high
people.
quality.
You
Yeah,
want people. And again, this becomes the give and the take. So you want people, but if people who don't live right in the area don't want to come there, because they can't get there easily, you're going to maybe get more people who live downtown to walk there, but are you cutting off the rest of the city from wanting to come there? So
No,
it's a
I
trade-off.
totally take the point about the high city and the low city and the divisions within. I totally take that point, and those are definitely things that should be addressed. I just don't think that that I don't necessarily think that dealing with those roads by not basically trying to make them better places for people to come to rather than to drive through uh, uh, is a solution. I mean, I think it's more about providing good or better public transit, which I would certainly support from those areas.
Can I just jump in? I want to go back to your point, Scott, about the people not wanting to come downtown because there's something. It's an anecdotal point, but it's something that I noticed. It kind of stuck with me. Years ago, I took courses at Mac at their Jackson Square campus. So I was going downtown, night class. So I go down around 6 o'clock, 6 to 6:30, drive right down to Jackson Square, right downtown. And it was the strangest experience I've ever had in a major city downtown. Is that like at 5 o'clock from 6 to 6, it was like a mass exodus out of the downtown core. And I've never seen that where like people are like rushing to get out. And it's like most cities, people mill about. They say, okay, yeah, work day's done. Let's go grab a beer or a plate of wings at a bar around the corner, or let's meet up for drinks, or some people have date nights or whatnot. And it's just from 7 o'clock onward, the downtown was empty, save for quite frankly, homeless and dare I say it, drug users or whatever have you. And I said, this is like I didn't feel it was just one of those things I've never seen happen. Like, there was nobody hanging around to engage economically in the downtown. And I was like, I just said like this is a weird experience. And I'm wondering, you know, there's got to be a movement to keep people in downtown, to make people want to come down. And to say, well, this is going to keep people away. My argument is this: I don't think people are staying downtown anyways. Isn't just a change of the structure to keep people downtown a better solution than just saying, okay, keep things the way they are? Because the way things are right now, they don't seem to be really keeping people downtown or driving people to the downtown to engage and do business and all that. So isn't just a change better than the status quo?
You're just when you say we're going to keep people downtown, I'm picturing a hostage taking where we're going.
It was bad. It was a bad choice of words,
No,
but
no, I'm
I
joking
want to
with you.
encourage like
No,
people saying, "Oh no, I'll wait an hour or two. I'm going to go to this bar, grab a beer with my
I get
buddies from work,
100% what you're
all
saying.
that."
I
Yeah.
get 100% what you're saying. The only other city I've ever seen, and it's for a different reason that I've seen, and I get your description, is Houston. And when I was down in Houston, one thing I didn't know about that city, and I was told, is that there is literally no residential downtown. People go there and then poof, they're gone. Different reason for
Mhm.
Hamilton, but it was the same view, I guess, is what you're describing. Um, so this is a this I think is an even more complicated discussion than what we're talking about with traffic. And I know that the two can be potentially tied together, but there are I love this city. I chose to live in this city. I moved here, as I say, I grew up in Toronto. I chose to come and live in Hamilton. I've raised a family here. I've lived here all my adult life. I don't have bad things to say about this city, but there are some real challenges downtown that seemed for a period of time, and I don't even know what that period of time would be. I couldn't even put a date frame on it, that we were making some inroads as far as cleaning it up and getting it pointed. I know there are still spots that are doing really well, but more broadly, it seemed like things were heading in a positive direction. And your comment, what I hear, I'm sure what you hear from people as well is, boy, downtown is struggling right now. I don't know that any kind of traffic situation is going to fix that. I think there are huge issues around, as you say, homelessness, encampments, drug use, mental health, um, other things that also factor into this about Hamilton's downtown and some of the challenges. And quite honestly, I'm not nearly smart enough to try and explain how to fix all those things, because these are massive, massive problems that just, it's I got married downtown 31 years ago at a church right downtown, right across the street from First Ontario Center, at Philpott Church, which was right across the street. We had our pictures after we got married. We walked out onto the front steps and had photos there. It was quite lovely. And today, there is a fence up on that same porch because there was so much drug activity and so much stuff going on. It's a different place. And yeah, you know what? Some will argue that bringing more, slowing traffic down and have more pedestrian walking there will fix that. Others will say, no, people aren't going to come down there and do that until it's fixed. I don't know the answer.
Just to clarify, I'm not saying that fixing traffic is a panacea and that's going to solve all of Hamilton's woes.
I didn't take that.
And I just want to clarify for our listeners on this, we've kind of, a theme we keep coming back to is that it's all connected, and that it's not really like a laundry list of items to fix a city's problems or to address it. It's just, we've noticed with Hamilton, a big factor is like people just don't want to come into the downtown core as it is. They come down because it's necessary to work, but they don't want to mill about and do that economic activity to revitalize it, which is, I think we're all in agreement, needs to happen in Hamilton. Um, I'm kind of giving the city council a benefit of the doubt, is that I don't think they did this on a whim of just, hey, we want to just muck about with street designs. I do believe, speaking with a number of counselors off the record, that they understand we need to slow down people to come into the downtown. We need to make it a more inviting city to come in, set up a shop, set up a business, make it thrive, and give it a chance to succeed. And I want to say that's what the city council is trying to do here. I will say this: I like your idea of just taking the lights and mucking about with that timing, because I think that might just be a cost effective strategy as opposed to the tearing up. But
well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a
yeah,
question, if I can. And
sure.
and so I don't. I also, for the record, don't think. I don't think, I haven't really thought this through, but when you just said, I don't believe council is intentionally trying to create problems.
Mhm.
I think they are trying to solve things, but I think some of the symptoms of what the solution that is being proposed will lead to other problems. And so my thing is, do you both think that if you close King Street to traffic by LRT, reduce Main Street and reduce Dundurn Street, that this will not have the effect of creating massive traffic jams for much of the day?
I think
I don't think so. If I can just jump in on that one
sure,
first,
sure.
Joel. Uh, no, I don't think so, because I mean I think it would create more traffic. Yeah, and I think everybody knows it will create more traffic. The staff at the council meeting said this is going to create more traffic in terms of slower traffic. Um, I just think if you look at, you know, I'm not holding Toronto up as an example of all that is good in urban planning, but everybody knows that Toronto is a bear to drive around, and yet it's the most important economic powerhouse in the nation. And when you go there, it's like you're going to see a Jays game, or if you're going for business reasons, whatever, you think, okay, shall I take the train? Shall I take this other route? Or shall I suck it up and drive? And you make your decision. And certainly, I think I'm fairly typical in it'll be one, it's not always the same decision that I make. It depends where I'm going, all those things. That's a good situation. Um, the fact that driving is a bit of a pig in Toronto means that most of the people I know who live in Toronto don't own cars anymore. The young people don't even bother learning how to drive anymore because they're like, well, why? I'll just take the TTC. It's better. This is the kind of world that we actually have to be moving towards. And yeah, it's painful for those of us who've lived. I hate using the privilege word, but it is kind of a privileged thing that we've had this privileged existence where the world has been designed for us to never be inconvenienced on our way to places in a car. But it was fine to inconvenience us if we wanted to cycle, if we wanted to walk, or if we wanted to do other things, because the car comes first, because they're the important people. I don't think we can design our world like that anymore. I think we need to think in more rounded ways. And I think it's created really ugly cities. And Hamilton can do so much better than that. I really like Hamilton. I chose to live here too. But I think it's got the opportunity, partly because it's on old bones that were designed before we all drove cars. It's got the opportunity to be the kind of attractive place that, say, Mississauga doesn't, because it was designed from the ground up as a car only place. Now it's got huge problems because it's like, how do you unpick that mess? It's really difficult to. Hamilton can, because it wasn't designed purely as a car place. But where those choices have been made, we're now, yeah, there's going to be some pain while we make that transition. So no, I don't think it will be gridlock. I think it'll be inconvenient, in the same way it's inconvenient in many other cities in the world. And it should be, to a limited degree, inconvenient if you're going to choose to take a polluting gas engine into the center of someone's city. I think that's fair enough. And traffic reaches its level. If the traffic gets bad enough, people will choose other routes. And it's a kind of cynical thing to say, but it's true. Uh, you know, and those are the choices we need to be smarter about, I think, going forward.
You okay. When you say it's inconvenient, or we were privileged, I would argue that that discussion, that argument could work or could make sense for those who live right downtown. I simply, as I say, the way Hamilton is built, the way it's designed, the way geographically it's set up, I think that's a losing argument to those who live in the suburbs. There's an awful lot of them that they simply will say, I don't want to then participate in going downtown. And if that's an acceptable trade-off, to say that we will then have a fair percentage of the city of Hamilton that will never decide to venture downtown, if that's the trade-off and we're good with that, okay. But if that's not a trade-off that we're good with, then I think we are solving one problem by creating another problem.
I I'll just counter that point to say I think Hamilton right at this moment is at a great crossroads in its future. I mean, I think Hamilton is at the perfect point in its development to kind of make a choice of whether it wants to go left or right. No, no, not really any pun intended on that one, but just we know that the city of Hamilton is trying to intensify its downtown. It's trying they've committed to not build out on its on the sorry,
Urban boundary
urban
expansion.
boundaries.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. To not build it, and they want to intensify in the downtown. That's great, wonderful. I think they need. There's a lot of old buildings that need to be retrofitted, renovated into businesses and condos and all that wonderful stuff. But to do that and to say, well, now we need to plan. Now you have to have a car to drive around, especially in Hamilton, downtown Hamilton, is not a good idea. And I like that the fact that it seems that city council, to give them credit on this one, is putting transit first as opposed to just keep building out for the car. There's a lot of ways that this goes south, and I think that's where you and us and you, Scott, is good to hold council to the fire, make sure that they don't take their eye off the target. But I do think it's Hampton's at the right point to say, let's move. If we're going to develop a new downtown or new city core, let's make sure we do that with transit in mind so that people can get around freely, efficiently, and not be stuck in just, okay, let's just add more cars onto the road because that's our right. Yeah, you can give people a choice. And as they build up that downtown core, you expand transit to the suburbs, to Flamborough and Waterdown, up to the mountain, et cetera, to get them access into the downtown. But we got to start somewhere, and I think this is a good place to start.
You know what? I'll leave that with you. I don't my question about the willingness of people in the suburbs to take transit, it stands because it you talk to so many people who just say it doesn't work for me right now. So can the city, I guess, the underlying premise of what you're saying is that there will be a day soon when people in all corners of this city will have access to great transit. As I say, like the TTC that I grew up with, where it came along regularly. It didn't matter where you live for the most part.
Mhm.
You could get where you wanted to go. I don't think that is the case right now. And so the issue becomes what's going to be the cost of that? Because people in Hamilton are already paying an extraordinarily high tax rate that I don't know how much appetite there is to start adding much, much, much more for all kinds of things. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to make it work? How are you going to make it cost efficient? I know we've had talk, counselors have thrown out the idea before of free transit. Let's just make it free for everybody. Well, then, you know what? If that idea ever takes root, then you're now looking for even more money because all the money that was coming into transit is now having to be through tax measures.
It's
These,
funny. I
again,
mean, just to jump in on that, it's like we always think, oh, it's incredibly radical, crazy, expensive idea to just pay for everybody's transit. And it's like, yeah, when's the last time you paid to go on a road?
every
Roads are
day,
free. Yeah,
every fuel tax. I pay taxes to the
yeah.
province every time I fill up my car. I pay
So we pay through tax, but that's just the same thing. It's just another. So you pay through for your transit ticket through tax. It's it's basically saying the same thing, and yet we think one idea is incredibly radical, and one idea is like, yeah, you know, we pay through tax for roads. It's a 100% subsidy system. Uh, Wait, we could go on all day. We've really enjoyed this conversation, Scott, and must really say that we appreciate uh, you coming on to sort of uh, not face the music. That's not putting it the right way, but it was a controversial piece. I think there was a lot of strong opinions out there, and it's awesome that when anybody's willing to sort of come on and say, you know what, I'm going to stand up and put my side of the argument. That's all we can ever ask. We wish there were more people who were willing to do that. I
Well, I'll
mean,
say this to that if I can jump in really quickly, because one of the things that I abhor about modern society, and that sounds very broad and very, but one of the things I hate is that when discussions happen and people have a disagreement, that if I disagree with you, you must be not just having a different point of view. You are an evil, hateful monster who wants people to die
Mm.
because your view is evil. Look, we can have a discussion about this. We can disagree about this. We can disagree strongly about this. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. I hope it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It's a difference of opinion. We have different views on how things should be done. But I appreciate your comment because, again, I do a radio show every night. And some of the time, boy, you deal with this where it's not just that we differ, it's that it must mean you are a horrible person who only wants the worst for the world. So I don't think either of us want that.
yeah,
No,
no, absolutely couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree
and you
more
know
with you
what?
there.
I think some of your thoughts there, Scott, are completely valid. And the thing is, it's I think it's debates like this, conversations like this, that ultimately holds our elected officials, whether it's city council, Queens Park, or Ottawa, to account, because we need to have these discussions free from kind of that political rigmarole, as well. So yeah, the door's open for you to come back on. Maybe we'll talk sports next time.
Whatever you like.
That's where we can let the real expletives fly,
That gets
as it
really hot
were.
under the collar. Yeah. We appreciate it, Scott. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks.